How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to another episode here at Maple Monkey Media. For all you returning subscribers, new subscribers over the past week, my mind has actually been blown with the amount of support that I've got from y'all, so much love, much prayers go out to every single one of y'all, new, old, returning, and even if you haven't found it yet. But if you want to, hit that subscribe button below. There's going to be off-grid videos and stories coming in, hopefully 2 videos a week. Like I said, we got another epic story of survival that I think is even better than the last one. If you didn't check out my last story, then it's about 5 guys who were stranded at sea for over 9 months. I think it's a pretty good story, so go check that out. It's probably 2 videos before this one, and there'll be a link in the description. This one is about a man down in Australia, down under, named Ricky Megee. It's an epic story of survival. And this takes place when Ricky was about 35 years old. He was living on one side of Australia, and he got a job on the complete other side of Australia. So he had to travel from one side of the continent all the way to the other side. And going through central Australia is just pretty much a barren wasteland. There's a desert called the Tanami Desert, and it is just super barren, lots of deserts and lots of farmlands. So there's only a few barren roads that go from point to point. Very rugged terrain. Ricky was driving down the road, and he was going, like I said, through the central deserts of the Tanami Desert, and it's a very, very rural part of Australia. So you're not going to probably run into too many cars, and especially in this time of year, it was the wet season. So the tricky thing about this time of year is with the wet season is it washes out roads, it washes out just completely everything, floods the plains, floods the lands and the roads, so it makes it very, very hard and treacherous for passerbyers. So he was driving down the road, and he noticed that there was somebody pulled off onto the side of the road. So he figured, well, chances are they're not going to be able to run into somebody else, on the only vehicle that I've seen going down this road for miles and miles and miles. So he figured that he'd pull over and try to see if he can't help these people out on the side of the road. He ended up taking somebody with him in his vehicle. They said they needed to go, obviously, to a garage or a station further up the way. So he brought them in the vehicle, and they started driving. He remembers that they said that they were thirsty or hungry or something, so he said that he had a cooler in the back, and that to help yourself and grab a couple drinks for him and his passenger that he had. And he thinks that while in doing so, this person slipped a drug into his drink. He remembers picking somebody up, and this is where his whole ordeal began. All of a sudden, Ricky wakes up with the smell of dirt right hard into his nostrils. Everything was super black, pitch black dark, and he had his arm up over his head where he was laying on his side. All of a sudden, he felt quite a bit of weight leaning down on his back. So instinctively, he pushed himself up, and then that's when he broke through the light layer of soil that his attackers ended up burying him in a shallow grave and robbing him, leaving him out to die. His attackers literally left him for dead in the middle of nowhere, and in doing so, they took his shoes, they took his socks, and they only left him with whatever he had on his back. That was just a very light t-shirt and a very, very light pair of shorts. Other than that, he had nothing, no survival means, no backpack, no nothing. If there was an upside to his situation, there's one upside, and that is being that the time that Ricky was going towards his new job, like I said earlier, it was the rainy season. So with the rainy season in Australia, it's a little bit cooler than it is in the summer seasons. Temperatures in the rainy season in Australia usually run from 38 to 42 degrees Fahrenheit. So by any means of the imagination, it is still super, super hot. But compared to the 40, 50, 60, 70 degrees that it could be in the summer months, it's a little bit of a blessing. For the first 30 minutes, Ricky was hit in the head, he was buried, so he was obviously baffled and confused. For the first little bit, he was just trying to even gather his consciousness to what was going on, where he was, what he was doing, and things of that nature. It took him a few hours overall to start to remember what had started to happen over the last little bit. He remembered he was driving a vehicle, so he looked around, noticed that he didn't see any vehicle. Then all of a sudden it hit him just like a ton of bricks. He remembered that he pulled over and he was trying to help somebody, and then that's when he formulated his thoughts on he was robbed and left for dead. So over the next little bit, Ricky just sat there. He just sat there calm, cool, and collected, trying to gather his thoughts and trying to formulate his next plan of action. While he was gathering his plan of action, he was looking around to the left and looking around to the right, and he noticed off in the distance there was a pretty big hill compared to the rest of the area where it was flat. So he decided that his first move would be to go over to that hill, to go up to the very top of it. That way he could at least see from a vantage point if there's any roads, if he can see anybody in a vehicle, any tractors, trucks, anything that he could go to as a viewpoint to try and get some help out of this dire situation. He slowly made his way up to the top of the hill, looked around every which way that he could see, and unfortunately there was nothing. It was just him and bare landscape in the middle of the super, super hot, rugged Tanami Desert. Even though while he was looking around, he didn't see any signs of life, didn't see any houses, buildings, or people, he did notice off in the distance that there was a fairly large thunderstorm. So he thought, well, since there's no water, I don't have any food, I need to find something to be able to try and survive this. So in his brain, he's like, okay, thunderstorm, water, we got to go that way. So that's exactly what he did. He started hiking off in the direction of the thunderstorm. He started walking, trudging foot after foot through this mercifully hot desert. And after going about 85 kilometers, he finally came across a seasonal brook. To save some wear and tear on his feet, considering he had no socks, no form of protection for his feet, he decided he would hop on in the river, and he used the river to float down probably about 6 or 7 kilometers. In doing this, he looked off onto the side of the bank, and he seen that there was a road. So he managed to get out of the river, and he found out that it was an old cattle station road. Now, to put this property in perspective of how big it is, it's 2,500 kilometers square. And that's just only one of the properties that is in this vast encompass of this desert. The only problem with it being the time that a year that it is the station hands and the cattle helpers, they're usually not going to be around at this time of year just because of the rain. It floods out the roads and makes them almost completely impassable to come by with a regular vehicle. It took him about 2 days to find this river that he started floating down to find the cattle ranch. So all the time before that, he had no source of water. Survival measure kicked in, and he said, well, I'm going to have to do the only thing that I know how to, and it's unfortunate as it is, I'm going to have to drink my urine to stay alive. So that's exactly what he did. He started drinking his urine, and he actually mentioned that if you're ever in a survival situation and you have to drink your own urine, just make sure that you let it cool down a little bit, because he didn't, and I guess it was just almost even more unbearable than you would think it is if it were cold. After getting to this cattle station road, he again noticed off in the distance thunderclouds, so he did the same thing as before, and he started following the thunderclouds. And he walked for kilometers and kilometers and kilometers until he finally came across another watering hole. Now, where he walked so many kilometers, almost 100 kilometers altogether, his feet were completely tore up, almost right down to the bone. He knew he needed shelter of some kind to protect him from the animals and the elements and to give him a little bit of shade. So what he did was he went to the side of the riverbank and started digging and digging and digging. He dug himself out a little hole, just enough for himself to slide his whole body in and to give him some protection from the elements. Overall, he's spent more than a couple days here, actually. He would spend probably around 10 days trying to mend and heal his feet to get them back to where he could actually start walking again. This is actually where he would get his first little bit of food, was at this watering hole where he was for 10 days. Now, while he was here on the riverbank, what he did, he would eat things like bugs and insects, leeches, lizards, and frogs. There's some grass and other edibles that he found out that after, through trial and error of eating them, that he would eat those as well. He said that he would distinguish the plants by the way that they tasted. If they tasted good, that he would eat them, and if they didn't taste good, that he would throw them away. So in doing so, he actually learned that some of the plants that he did eat were actually bushcraft native plants that people hundreds of years ago that lived in the bushcraft would eat these plants as well. In his attempts to go back to the first watering hole that he found by the seasonal brook, he actually remembers passing out 3 or 4 times, only to wake up just absolutely frying and cooking in the hot Australian sun. He actually had to crawl the last 500 or 600 meters to get back to the water hole due to lack of energy and just complete and sheer utter exhaustion. After this happened, Ricky knew that he was in a bad way, and that when he was at this water hole, that there was going to be no way that he would have enough energy to get himself out and to try and find another way to get out to civilization again. He knew that either he was going to die at this water hole, or hopefully he would be found. Ricky continued to find frogs and lizards and bugs and different plants that he could eat to try and sustain himself. Even though he wasn't gaining weight, he was still losing massive amounts of weight. He was having some sustenance to at least keep himself going. When Ricky was at the start of this ordeal, he was about 6'3" and 225, 230 pounds. And at this time, he had lost over about 130 pounds. So he was pretty much just skinny as a rake, just skin and bones, weighing in at a mere just about 100 pounds. He would say that every day that would go by, he would get smaller and smaller. He would look at himself, look at his arms and his whole body, and he would notice that there would be bones sticking out and protruding that he never knew even existed, that he's never seen before. He literally considered himself a walking skeleton, just like the old saying is, just skin and bones. He attributes not dying to because he was at least eating frogs and lizards and drinking water daily. What he figures is that was enough energy and enough water, just enough to keep his organs functioning and to keep them moving properly, even though that he was just slowly getting emaciated and die of starvation. This was keeping his organs alive. So days started beginning to turn into weeks. He was going through all of these thoughts that he would never see his family again, thoughts that he wasn't married, thoughts that he wouldn't have kids. And he says that those thoughts going through his head attributed him to staying alive, that he wanted to see his family again, that he wanted to get married, that he wanted to have kids. So he kept fighting and fighting and fighting with everything that he had to try and hope that he would get found and get saved out of this dire situation before he perished from starvation. Every night, Ricky would hear this big pack of wild dingoes yipping and cawing and yowling at him. He thought that they were sizing them up for his next meal. So what he would do is, for his shelter that he had there was a big piece of drain pipe that was left over from one of the dams that was being built there. So he would go into there and sleep in there every single night. And what he ended up doing was he would make the very front of this pipe, start packing it with mud to make the entrance smaller and smaller and smaller. So when he was inside, it was small enough, he would pack up rocks and start stacking them up. So just in case, if he were to perish overnight, that the dingoes or coyotes or any kind of animals, they wouldn't be able to get inside and to get his remains. So at least that would be something for his family to find if he ended up perishing. In this drain pipe that he was using as a house, Ricky took 2 pieces of sticks and put them together just like a cross and put it right on the top of his drain pipe. He figured that even if somebody was walking by or driving by, that they would see hopefully a weird cross on this drain pipe and think that that's not supposed to be there, so that they would investigate and either find him alive or find his remains. It wasn't until right around day 71 where some station hands that were living and working at the ranch that he was on were in the area, and they noticed off in the distance that they seen this drain pipe with the cross on it. So they went over to investigate. All of a sudden, to their surprise, they looked inside and Ricky was there. He was lying down, very frail, almost on the edge of death, but he was alive. To their shock, he was alive. So what they did, they brought him out of the pipe, brought him back to their vehicle, and brought him all the way back to the Darwin Hospital, where he could finally get a proper evaluation and where essentially his life was saved. Another couple more days in that drainage pipe, he literally would have been absolutely nothing, and he would have just perished from starvation. So there we have it. There's another story. I mean, I can't believe stranded 71 days in the middle of a desert with absolutely nothing on your back but your clothes that you have, just a shirt and shorts. That's all you have. And he survived 71 days just by pure determination and perseverance. Absolutely phenomenal. So that's the story. Story number 2. Like I keep saying, we're going to get better at this storytelling. I watch a guy named Mr. Ballin, and he's a phenomenal storyteller. So just going to keep practicing, going to keep going with it. And muchly appreciate y'all checking out this video. If you want to check out any of my other content, then just hit that subscribe button down below. Check it out on my channel. Going to be shooting for 1 story a week, hopefully 1 or 2 other off-grid related videos as well per week to go with those, to give you guys maybe 2 or 3 videos a week, hopefully amping up here in the future. Much appreciated. Much love to all y'all. This is Adam here signing off from Maple Monkey Media. Until next time, keep that stick on the ice, and there is no failure if you just keep going. Woo! Cheers.